Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Dino Turner for sending in some awesome pictures of his 206th Valhallan Regiment fighting against the vile Tyranid forces. I have to say that this is a really impressive looking army. Dino, really like the sort of effects you've done on the vehicles. And those classic Valhalla models also look absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. So without further ado guys, let's get on with today's tactics video. And we are going to be taking a look at the tank aces from Psychic Awakening. So for those of you that have been living under a rock, the latest Psychic Awakening supplement, The Greater Good, despite the fact it has a very Tau-like name in it, contains a huge amount of additional rules for the Imperial Guard. One of those rules is tank aces. So essentially how a tank ace works is when you designate a warlord, instead of giving that warlord a warlord trait, you can instead choose to take a tank ace trait elsewhere in your army. So explain it very clearly. If you have a company commander, he is an infantry model, he is still your warlord, he would still need to be the model that is killed to give up warlord, but instead of him having a warlord trait, for example, Master of Command to get an extra order, you don't take that warlord trait and instead you are able to give a tank ace trait to one of your vehicles. Okay, now that's one. You can also, but there is an alternative. If you want to keep your main warlord with a warlord trait, for example, if you want to get an extra order out of that company commander or Lord Commissar, you can still take a warlord trait, and instead you can spend one command point pre-game to take on the tank ace stratagem, and you can make one of your vehicles a tank ace. Third option is you can actually give up your warlord trait like you did in option 1 and spend a command point like you did in option 2 in order for you to get 2 tank ace abilities. Now, even though the tank ace stratagem is pre-game, it specifically says you can only use the stratagem once per battle. So you can't make if you were to take 5 or 6 Leman Russes, you couldn't make them all tank aces. Okay? The maximum number of tank aces you can get your hands on is 2. Now, I have seen, before we get into what these rules are, I have seen some arguments to be made about sort of jimmying the system slightly and getting a tank ace via the Vigilus Detachment. So what does that mean? So when you take a specialist detachment from the Vigilus Defiant book, you can spend 1 CP in that book to take a field commander, and that field commander can take a warlord trait. So what that means is instead you could spend your 1 CP from Vigilus to take a field commander, but then you don't actually take one of the special detachment warlord traits. You give that up and instead you take a tank ace. Why would you do this? What it means is you can take a warlord with a warlord trait, then spend a command point on field commander to get access to another warlord trait, but it would normally be just a special one from Vigilus. But you give that field commander warlord trait up and you're able to get another tank ace. You're able to use that for your tank ace ability, and then you spend 1 CP for the tank ace stratagem. So there is a way of actually getting around that restriction. You can take a warlord, a field commander, give it the field commander trait, take a tank ace instead, and then spend 1 CP from the tank ace. Not sure how legal that will remain. I do not believe that was intentional by Games Workshop, and I would expect that to be FAQ'd away. But for now, there is a reasonable argument to be made. But if it was myself, I'm presenting that information for you guys to know it. It may be something that becomes set in stone, is totally legit to use. Best to flag it now, be aware of it, keep an eye on it, would be my recommendation, guys. Keep an eye on it. But if I was to give some advice, I would say assume that loophole is going to be closed, and then be pleasantly surprised if it's not. So I would go forward playing this as intended. I know that's a rule that some people don't like, but I would go forward. I would give up the Warlord trait from the book, as you normally would do. Take your tank case that way, and then spend the 1 CP. If you want to get your 2 tank cases, that's the way you can do it. That's the way you should do it. And then it might be that Games Workshop FAQ it and say, no, that's totally legit, you can do that. In which case, thumbs up, Brucey bonus. But for now, guys, I wouldn't try and jimmy the system too much. I would play it. I'd play it straight. I'd be a straight edge, and that's how I'd recommend to all guard players. That's what we have a reputation for, playing it straight. So I'd play it straight, and then if it turns out that it gets FAQ'd or it gets, you know, this argument gets accepted by like an ITC tournament, then I would that's when I would embrace it. But until then, I'd play it straight and play what you know with certainty rather than what you are not sure about. So that's how you take a tank ace. But what tank ace traits are there out there? Well, there are 3 kinds of tank ace you can take in your army. You take a main battle tank ace, you can take a support ace, or you can take a super heavy ace. So if you want to, if you give up, you know, you can take a main battle tank ace. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options that you can take. The restriction is you must take this on a vehicle, and that vehicle must have the Leave and Rust keyword. So very important to remember this, because before I get into this, I've seen a lot of people say, but you could take like a vulture, a flyer, and give it a tank ace stratagem. No, you can't do that. It's very specifically has the restrictions in the book, guys. These so main battle tank ace is only for a Leave and Rust. A support ace is only for a Basilisk, Wyvern, Hydra, Manticore, or Deathstrike, and a super heavy ace is only for a vehicle model that has a Titanic keyword. Okay, so we'll go through those. So now you know the restrictions. Basically, guys, these are for tracked vehicles, and there's nothing for Chimeras, unfortunately, or other transports, or Sentinels. I don't believe there's one for Sentinels. No, there is not one for Sentinels, which is a shame. It would have been nice to have some sort of recon Talon commanders, but whatever. Anyway, so we'll go through the main battle tank aces now, which, to be honest, guys, are probably where the main excitement should be. So the first one you have is Master Mechanic. Okay, the ace knows their vehicle's ways and foibles in great detail, and is able to repair minor damage with ease. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against this unit, reduce the damage characteristic of that weapon by 1 to a minimum of 1 for that attack. So that's very nice. Reducing damage is a really strong ability to have. It means that any of those Imperial Fist Stalker bolt rifles that are trying to crunch your tank ace will only be doing 2 damage instead of 3 damage, and if you're facing any other weapons, any other sort of 2 damage weapons, that's going to get reduced to 1 damage. It just makes your vehicles a lot more resilient. It means they're in the fight for longer. I would say that that is a solid choice to take. The next one, slow and purposeful. The ace is incredibly deliberate in their actions, taking their time to make the perfect shot. In your shooting phase, when resolving an attack made by this model, if it did not move a distance less than half, if it did not move or moved a distance less than half its move characteristic in the preceding movement phase, reroll wound rolls of 1. Now that is very, very powerful as well, guys, because what you can do with that is if you use the tank or the gunner's kill on sight, then you can reroll 1s to hit, and then you are slow and purposeful, you can then also reroll wound rolls of 1. Or if you really want to double up on all them buffs, you could take Yarrick for any regiment, or if you're Katachan, you could take Harker, or if you're Cadian, you could just stay still. And then what you could do is you could reroll your 1s to hit, reroll your 1s to wound, and then in your turn you could order yourself Strike and Shroud. So you've got a tank which is super durable and putting the damage output. I think that one is absolutely a go-to for something like the Hammer of Sunderland's tank commander. You know, something which doesn't really need any extra AP, doesn't really need any extra mobility, so that can sit back and do long range shooting. But you know, it's going to be wounding its primary target on 2s or 3s. Yeah, getting reroll 1s to wound is a biggie. There's actually very few ways in the guard to get reroll 1s to wound. There's only the one order, bring it down, and that's only for infantry. You can't get it on tanks. So that is actually that's a bit of a sleeper one. I like that one. Weapons expert is the next one. This is the one that has everyone extremely excited. The ace has truly mastered their vehicle's primary weapon, using it to deliver killing shots against the odds. Improves the armor penetration characteristic of turret weapons. This model is equipped with by 1, so AP 0 becomes AP -1. It's a very obvious standout winner for this, guys, and it is the Punisher. Okay, the Punisher cannon would if you move half distance with it, will then be shooting 40 strength 5 AP -1 shots. That is really, really good. That cannot be overstated how good that is. It doesn't make the Punisher great. It's not at destroying tanks. Don't think it's suddenly become this super anti-tank weapon. It's not that. What it's very good at is just digging Marines out of cover. At this point, if you take a tank ace with a Punisher cannon with this ability, you pair it with an Ash Path to remove cover from the Marines. Then you shoot the Punisher at them, and suddenly those Marines are on a 4+ save. You're shooting 40 shots at them. Of course, you're going to give yourself reroll 1s to hit somehow. So you're going to hit with about 30 shots. Of those 30 shots, you're going to wound with 20, and then the Marines are going to fail 10 saves. That's some napkin math hammer for you, which basically means that this Punisher, every turn, can delete a 5-man intercessor squad. That is not something to be sneered at, simply because most competitive Marine armies out there will only run like 6 intercessor squads, and so you've got one unit in one of your turns that can just delete that, and it's prime, and it's happy doing that. And we've not added on any of the heavy bolters as well. Don't forget, this thing can be a Punisher's best equipped with being a bolter boat Punisher. Slap 3 more heavy bolters on that thing. Hell, put a bloody heavy stubber on there. Really go for as many shots as possible. You know, go for the 52 shots in one vehicle, and that vehicle is then perfectly happy just deleting a squad of intercessors every turn, just like every single turn. And the great thing about this, and I want to mention this now, guys, is there's no restriction in here, from what I can see, that stops you from taking the same tank ace ability twice. So you could take a Leman Russ tank commander with a Punisher cannon and make it a weapon expert, give up your warlord trait to do that, and then you could spend a CP and take a second Leman Russ Punisher tank commander and also give that the tank ace weapon expert trait. So you could run 2 Leman Russ Punishers with AP -1 on both their turrets. That is 80 strength 5 AP -1 shots. That is easily between those 2 Punisher cannons and all those heavy bolters and heavy stubbers. You know, you could look at 2 to 3. You're looking at a minimum of 2 and probably 3 intercessor squads being removed each turn. At least 2.5, I would say. I would say each Punisher cannon will remove 1 intercessor squad. The heavy bolters combined, you're looking at 18 shots. You're looking at 12 hits, you're going to reroll the 1s. You're looking at 14 hits, you're going to wound on 3s. So you're looking at almost 10 wounds. Let's say 9 wounds to be awkward. That's 4.5 dead intercessors. 4 to 4.5 wounds, that's 5 wounds, that's 2.5 dead intercessors basically. So these 2 tanks, between them, can kill 12, I would say 12 to 13 intercessors. Okay, that's not insignificant. And you do that in 1 turn, and then you can do it again the next turn if the Punishers are still alive. So it is an absolutely fantastic trait. I'm not going to labour it anymore. I would just say that is probably the best take all comers tank ace trait. The next one, Armoured Rush. In your shooting, that should be, sorry. The Weapon Expert is the best all comers, and it should be your default option if you are taking Punisher tank commanders. If you don't have any Punishers, I think Slow and Percival should be your default one. Okay? It's all about damage output rather than defensing ability. Armoured Rush. The ace loves nothing more than the thrill of firing their tank's main cannon as they rush at the foe. In your shooting phase, the model can shoot with the tilt weapon it's equipped with, even if it advanced this turn. Not a big fan. Not a big fan, simply because there will be very few instances when your Leman Russes will be advancing. Typically, and if you do advance, bear in mind, guys, that you will not get double shot from your tank commander from your Leman Russ. Grounding advance only works if you move under half. If you're at that point where you're trying to move and advance, I don't see a huge amount of utility from it. Typically, it's going to be things like your infantry, which are sprinting all over the place, and it is going to be your tanks, which are going to be providing long-range fire support. Now, could you make an argument for this by saying, well, you could take a Leman Russ, you could move it the full 10, you could advance with it to get an extra D6 movement, and then you could use the Vigilist detachment stratagem, the Emperor's Fist stratagem, which allows you to move your full distance and still fire twice. Yes, you could, but I just don't see. That is a combination, and don't get me wrong, I just don't feel like your Russes are really wanting to sprint towards the enemy a lot of the time because they could get tied up. I'm not saying it's unusable. I'm just saying it's not. It does give you maneuverability, but I would say that it's best to go for a raw damage output trait. Please let me know in the comment section below if I've missed something obvious, but for me that one seems fairly weak. Up Armoured is the next one. The ace has invested considerable time in bolstering the armour of their vehicle. This model has a save characteristic of 2+. This is a very simple trait. It's a very effective trait. It just makes your tank 16% more durable. That is not something to be sniffed at. What you have to decide, guys, actually, what's a really interesting argument to make, is do you pick Up Armoured for the 2+ save or Master Mechanic for the reduction of damage? Now, I've tried Master Mechanic out a couple of times now, and it's been okay, but it hasn't really stopped my tank from dying. So I actually think, weirdly, Up Armoured might be better than Master Mechanic. I could be wrong, but this is my thinking behind it, guys. Okay? Master Mechanic reduces damage by 1. It doesn't help if you get hit by damage 1 weapons. And wouldn't it be better, in general, to take no damage? And the way you do that is by making an armor save. So if you have a 2+ save, and someone hits you with if you have a 3+ save and someone hits you with like a plasma gun, then or an AP-3 weapon, you've only got like a plasma gun. That's more than likely going to go through, and but then you only take 1 damage thanks to Master Mechanic. Okay, fair enough. But if you have Up Armoured, then you've got a 33% chance of not taking any damage whatsoever. So really, guys, you have to ask yourself, and you have to decide: do I want to have less of a save, but more insurance against multi-damage weapons, or do I just want to take the risk and just try and stop no damage from getting through and have something that helps me against 1 damage weapons? After I played against a Dark Angels list this week, which was basically old school assault cannon spam, and Master Mechanic was totally useless, and what would have been perfect would have been Up Armoured. So I do think if you have to pick between the two, it's a really, really difficult choice. It will depend on your meta, and if you're going to tournament, it will depend on the tournament meta. If you are likely to face overwhelming amounts of multiple damage weaponry, you probably want Master Mechanic. If you think you're going to be facing a lot of damage 1 spam weapons, probably want Up Armored. I'm going to do some more experimentation with Up Armored. I've not been overly impressed with Master Mechanic, unfortunately. The last one, Steel Commander. Tank Commander models with this ability can issue 1 additional tank order each turn. That's okay. It's nothing to write home about. Considering you can get the same thing from spending a CP and using Inspired Tactics, I am not overly sure how good the Steel Commander one is. Out of those 6, I think Weapon Expert is the best on a Lehman, if you're taking Lehman's Punish Tank Commanders. I think Slow and Purposeful is probably the best take all comers one. If you want to have damage output, if you're looking at defensibility, you probably want to look at Up Armored instead. Okay, so if you're not taking Lehman's Punishers, I would recommend to decide between Slow and Purposeful and Up Armored. It would be, yeah. So that's all the main Lehman Russ ones. Looking at support aces now. These are ones that affect your Basilisk, Wyvern, Hydra, Manticore and Deathstrike, like I mentioned before. There's only 3 of these, and only one of them is really worth it. Okay? And that's the first one, fortunately. Full payload. The A's always utilise their vehicle's weapons to their fullest effect determined to destroy their enemies. Do not roll to determine the damage characteristic of a weapon this model is equipped with. They have their maximum damage value, e.g. a weapon with damage D3 inflicts 3 damage. This one is just extremely good. It means that Basilisk does a flat 3 damage, which is very, very good to have. And let me tell you why it's very, very good to have. Because Grey Knight Paladins are making a big splash at the moment in the meta. And the strongest thing about Grey Knight Paladins, well, amongst their many list of strong features, is the fact they have 3 wounds. Now, there are actually, for most armies, it's very difficult for them to get flat 3. Okay, obviously Marines are an exception, they get flat 3 coming out the wazoo. Well, kind of actually. Imperial Fists get a lot of flat 3 if they're shooting vehicles, but if they're not shooting vehicles, it's not that good. They obviously have Smash Captains, but that's a close combat unit which might die to the 40 Paladin Stormbolter shots that it's going to be taking. So, Guard are actually weirdly well equipped with lots of flat 3 damage weapons. And don't forget, guys, if Paladins continue to be the meta-changing unit that they are, you're going to be seeing a lot more of them. You're going to need a lot more flat 3 damage weapons. So, in a basic Guard army, you have access to the Hammer of Sunderance, flat 3 damage. And then you have access to 2 Manticores or 2 Basilisks, which you could give both of those a support ace trait and go full payload. You've got 3 flat 3 damage weapons there. You could also, if you were really crazy, look at things like super heavies. Bane Blades have a flat 3 damage cannon. And what is your opponent going to pick to kill? Tank Commander, Manticores or the Bane Blade? He's going to go for the Bane Blade because it's big and imposing. Whereas actually you don't mind losing the Bane Blade if it then means your other damage 3 weapons stick around. So yeah, I think full payload is the only one worth considering here. The next one, Shatter of Will. In the shooting phase, after you've resolved all the attacks made by this model, select one enemy unit that any of those attacks scored a hit against until the end of the turn. Subtract 2 from the leadership characteristic of that unit. So you only have to hit, but in order to cause a leadership test, you have to cause at least 1 wound. So if you cause a wound to a unit, if you kill an enemy unit, they're going to take a wound. So that's 1 off the leadership, and then another -2. It's like you've done three casualties. But you could pair it up with something like the Scion Jackal, Tempest of Scions, but I don't think it doesn't help you against armor. It doesn't help you against MSU, really. I don't think it's a good one. you could combo it, but if you come across a mech wall, you're in trouble. Well-stocked magazines. The ace knows the importance of always having enough ammunition to hand when rolling to determine the type characteristic of a ranged weapon this monster is equipped with. You can re-roll any or all of the dice. So, I don't like this one because you basically can get access to a very similar version of this by taking a custom regiment trait. If you're all being Katachan. Now, the advantage of well-stocked magazines is it lets you roll all the dice. So if you have a Manticore, which is 4d6 dice, and by some crazy bad luck you rolled 4 ones, you could re-roll all 4 of them. Whereas if you're a Katachan or Gunnery Expert Custom Regiment, you'd only get to re-roll 1 of those 4 dice. So well-stocked magazines is a good one to have. It's only really one that you'd be interested in on a Wyvern. On a Basilisk, you would use the custom trait / Katachan trait. You wouldn't need anything else. On a Manticore, you could reroll one of the dice and use a CP on the other one of the dice. Yeah, it's only really useful on a Wyvern, and those got a points increase recently, so I'm not overly enthusiastic. If I was to take a support ace trait, I would take full payload, and I would combine it with the new Psychic Awakening stratagem, which gives you, on a Manticore, if you can see the enemy unit, you get +1 to hit against it, which means your Manticore sits on 3s. That would be the best way to do it. Full payload and the new Psychic Awakening stratagem, definitely the way you combo the best out of your support aces. So the last category is super heavy aces. This is for Titanic units, so we can take tank command. We can take tank aces in Baneblades. Very nice. So the first one is a bit shit, unfortunately. In fact, they're all a bit shit, to be honest. So whilst it sounds cool, it's not that great. Inspiring might, such as the ace's reputation for snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, that they are an inspiration to all. When a morale test is taken for a friendly Ashmere time unit within 6 inches of this model, roll 1 additional dice and roll 1 additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. Guard have got plenty of ways for mitigating morale already. You just take Lord Commissars. You can execute 1 guy and re-roll it. Take a basic Commissar. You can execute a guy and re-roll it. You can use a CP and re-roll it. You can spend 2 CP of the many CP you're going to have to auto pass. You can spend 1 CP to take it on D3. Really don't need an inspiring. You could take a Tempest, a Ordo Perfectus command tank and have better use than this bloody super heavy trait. Skip it. The only thing of worth to mention is the fact that Baneblade is so massive that you could probably cover a significant portion of your army with that bonus. The next one, hull down deployment. The tank ace is an expert at maximising the available cover to shield their huge vehicle from attack. This is probably the best one. This model receives the benefit of cover until the first time it moves in the battle. Essentially a 2+ save Baneblade, guys. Now, a lot of people have been poo-pooing the Baneblade because they say it hasn't got a 2+ save and it hasn't got an invulnerable save. If Games Workshop could fix one of those things, then the Baneblade would be good. Well, you can now do that. You can now take a 2+ save Baneblade. The only problem is if someone has ignore cover and it doesn't help you in combat. And if you move, you lose it. But if you were not intending on moving it and you were intending, pardon me, on just blasting the enemy from afar and essentially using your tank as just a massive fire base, then I would say hull down deployment is the best one. Problem is, there's a lot of landslide blocking terrain in competitive play these days, so you kind of have to move. So not that good, unfortunately, but probably the best one overall. Steadfast Leviathan. This super heavy tank ace has fought alongside their allies for so long that they have learned to work seamlessly with them and adopt their ways of war. If your army is battleforged, this model gains the regiment doctrine of its regiment, even if it's in a super heavy auxiliary detachment. So, this one is okay, but not great, simply because you can get a regiment trait on a Baneblade either by taking a Supreme Command detachment. And if you're not taking Triple Battalion, then one of the detachments you should probably be taking is a Supreme Command detachment with 3 tank commanders in it. So it's not. It's you don't need to. You don't. It's not that needed. You know. Yeah, it basically is just for taking a. It's just for taking it's just for saving some points. If you were taking a Baneblade and the only way you were getting it a regiment trait is by taking a Supreme Command attachment, but for some reason you didn't really want to take that Supreme Command attachment, so you were just taking like the most cheap, basic bitch HQs just to fill out the points, just as a tax to take the Baneblade with a regiment trait, then what this lets you do is basically save that 105 points for your 3 Lord Commissars, or 90 points for your 3 Company Commanders. So why you wouldn't be taking those, I don't know. But that's what it lets you do. It lets you avoid paying a few tax points. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It is useful. But it doesn't... The problem with Inspiring Might instead of Leviathan is it doesn't improve the damage output or defensive capabilities of your vehicle. And really, that's all you want from a Super Heavy. You want it to be more survivable. It's got plenty of damage output. You just want your Super Heavy to be more survivable. And so hold down deployment makes a lot of sense. You could take hold down deployment, and then you could take Psychic Barrier, and then on a Psychic, and then you could take Night Shroud on a Psychic, and you've got a unit then which is on a 1-up save. And is -1 to hit. That is a pretty tough Beyblade. Now, normally the problem with one other thing I'd say to consider with hold down deployment is normally you take a Psychic to give it an extra save, by Psychic Barrier, but then it dies turn 1, and you're a bit like, that was annoying. So what hold down deployment lets you do is have a bit of insurance to try and make that Baneblade survive past turn 1. If you go second, if you go second, so I think it is good. I think hold on deployment is, there is a bit of ignore cover out there. I'm not gonna lie, like Imperial Fists are pretty big on the old ignore cover, but apart from against those units, it does actually hold on deployment is probably your best one if you want to take a Baneblade. So that's all the traits, guys. I've obviously gone through which I think are the best ones for each main battle tank ace. However, how would I run these in a competitive guard list? Okay. Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna sack off the super heavy aces. I don't know right now if Baneblades have what it takes. I don't think they do, unfortunately. I think Baneblades are still too much of a point sink. However, I would focus on the main battle tank aces and the support aces. What I would do very carefully is I would spread your tank ace abilities. I wouldn't put a tank ace on a Hammer of Sunderance, for example. I wouldn't, because you're putting a big kill me sign on that model. What I would do is I would take, if I was to take the most tank commanders, the most competitive armor I could get out there, I'd take Pask, because he's going to be the first one to die. I'd then take a Hammer of Sunderance, and then I would take 2 more tank commanders. I'd take 3 more tank commanders, and I would make 2 of them tank aces. That's how I would run it. And then with the third tank commander, which isn't a tank ace, I would actually give him the best gun, which sounds weird, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to spread out the firepower. If you put everything, all your eggs in one basket, that will just be taken away from you. New Marines will just delete it. Whereas what you want to do is spread out the love. So if the enemy kills Pask, it's fine. I've still got my 3 tank commanders and 2 tank aces. If the enemy kills the 2 tank aces, it's okay. I've still got my other tank commander who's got a really good weapon loadout, and I've still got Pask. So you really want to make the enemy pick and have to choose. It's all about playing mind games. So I did say I sack off super base. I just had a thought which might make me not do that. So Apologies for the confusion. If I was to run this, there'd be sort of 3 angles I'd go down. Okay, there'd be 3 angles I'd go down. First one is I would take 2 tank aces and make them both punishers and give them weapon expert. No doubt in my mind about that. Okay. Second way I would look at it is I would take a tank ace with... I'd probably take a tank ace with slow and purposeful on something like a Demolisher Cannon, because that's going to be wounding a lot of things on 2s, because thanks to being strength 10. And I'd combine that with the custom trait that gives me an extra 6-inch range on Demolisher Cannon, so I can get away with moving half and still shooting. And get the best and slow and purposeful. And I'd also then take a support ace as a Manticore, and I'd take full payload on that support ace, and I'd use that stratagem to give the +1 to hit. And then what you've got, guys, is you've got like Pask, who's a big deal. You've got your 3 other tank commanders, one of which is slow and purposeful. You've also got 2 other tank commanders, and you've got a Manticore, which can pull duty as like a pseudo tank commander kind of thing. It's hitting on 3s, so we're rolling 1s. So you can make it hit on 2s if you use overlap from Fields of Fire, or if you were a destroyer, you can make it hit on 2s that way. So yeah, it is really that's how I would play it. The third way I would do it is I would take a Baneblade as one of you. The problem with tank cases is you can only take 3 of them unless you go Cadian, which you can take 4 of them. Okay, because you can take Pask as well. The problem is that it's not that difficult for the enemy to remove 2 tank commanders, and then you've just got 2 left. And if you're not running Cadian, you've only got 1 left. So what you want to do is have a massive distraction card effects. Enter the Baneblade, or some other super heavy. I use Baneblade as a catch-all term. And the thing is with the distraction card effects is it has to be able to absorb enough damage. If it can't absorb enough damage, it doesn't do its job properly. If it dies too easily, it's not a distraction. It's just something that gets removed, and then the enemy moves on to your tank commanders as normal. So I would think about taking a Supreme Command Detachment with 3 tank commanders and Pask, and then in that Supreme Command Detachment, I would take a Baneblade. I would even consider just taking a real cheapo Baneblade, something like the Storm Sword, I think it is, or the Bane Sword, or the Bane Hammer. Bane Hammer's pretty good. Or just take a basic Baneblade with no upgrades. Just not even sponsors, just take it basic. And I'd give it the hold down deployment, so it's got that 2+ save. And so that means that Baneblade is going to take a hell of a kicking to put down. It's got 26 wounds, 2+ save. It's going to be a toughie to deal with. And if you get turn 1, then you give it another save, and you give it Night Shroud. So you really lay it, and you make that Baneblade really, really intimidating. And so your opponent, maybe you do load up with a few guns. Taking a pair of sponsors does up the beef factor of the Baneblade. Yeah, chuck it. You're in for a penny of a pound. Chuck another 60 points after it, just to put the sponsors on to make it a proper threat. The enemy then has to be like, okay, I have to kill this Baneblade, because if I don't, if it's a Destroyer Baneblade, then the enemy's just going to put Firstborn Pride in it, and it's going to blast the crap out of me. And if it's a Cadian one, they're going to plink off a wound with something, and then the Baneblade, they're going to play Overlap and Fields of Fire, and then the Baneblade is going to blast the crap out of me. So that would be a way that would be a way of me getting a Baneblade into my list, if you're really looking for a way of doing that, and a way of making the Baneblade do something. If your Baneblade dies in a turn 1, but it took your opponent's entire army to kill it, because it's so bloody tough, then and even if the Baneblade hasn't got a shot off, the Baneblade has done its job, because it's kept the main part of your army, tank commanders, alive. That's something to consider, guys. Something to consider. They're the way I see these traits being used. I think realistically you're going to see a lot of weapon expert Punisher Cannon tank commanders. I've been on the receiving end of those. It was not pretty. I lost a lot of Black Templars. I think you're also going to see a lot of maybe one Punisher Cannon tank commander with weapon expert, and then one full payload Manticore. That's what I would see. I think that's probably that's both of those options. I think you'll see as the most common choices for tank cases. I think a lot of people, unless you're running a pure infantry army, are not going to bother with taking a basic warlord trait anymore. I think a lot of people are just going to take tank case traits. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please let me know if I've got anything wrong in this video. Please put down in the comment section below. All this Psychic Awakening stuff is still very new. These first videos are basically sort of first impression videos combined with a little bit of battlefield testing, which helps me inform the decision a little bit better. Like, for example, I'm not that impressed by Master Mechanic anymore because of actually using it. And I'm much more impressed with things like Up Armored. So I have to, these are semi-informed videos, but at the same time, I'm sure I will be returning to this topic in a few months' time, once we've all got a much better idea of what is the best combos with these tank case traits. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.